Reading with your kids.
Hey, so great to see you. Come on in. Hi, my name is Jedley, and this is the Reading with Your Kids podcast and iTunes' #1 kids and family podcast. And we just learned that we are nominated for the iHeartRadio Podcast Awards as the best kids and family podcast. Thank you so very, very much for all of your great support. We have a great guest on for you today. He's returning. His name is Shawn B Robinson, and he is the author of Arestana, the Harry Quest. So as I just mentioned, the Reading with Your Kids podcast has been nominated for the first ever iHeartRadio Podcast Awards. Now, the award ceremony is taking place in LA on January 18th. It's going to be the first major award show to recognize the great and new medium of podcasting. And we're really excited that that we've been nominated. It's so very, very cool. And like a lot of these award ceremonies, the decision as to which podcast will get the award is up to you, up to the fans. So you can help us out. All you need to do is go to iHeartPodcastAwards.com and you can vote for the Reading with Your Kids podcast in the kids and family category. Now you can vote up to five times in that category each day. So if you love the show, I would absolutely be so very grateful if you went on the awards and voted 5 times every day for the Reading with Your Kids podcast. I know that's a lot to ask. So if you just have time to go on and vote once for the Reading with Your Kids podcast, we'd be really, really happy about that too. We're very grateful to even be recognized. It's such an honor, this tiny little podcast. It's grown so much. With the help of my amazing producer, Fatima, my family, all the wonderful guests, but most of all of you who make up the Reading with Your Kids podcast family. Thank you so very, very much. Joining us on the line right now from right outside of Toronto in Ontario in Canada, one of my favorite places in the world. He's returning. We love this guest and we love his books. Right now, we're going to meet the author of Arestana, the Harry Quest. Please welcome back Shawn B Robinson. Shawn, welcome back.
Thanks so much, Jed. It's great to be on your show. I really enjoyed my time last time.
How's the weather up in Ontario today?
Hot, actually.
Hot?
It's been a really strange fall. Like, it's just been really hot and warm and sunny. I'm not complaining.
There you go, yeah. I was just mentioning to my wife it's a beautiful time of year where it's 50 on one day and 80 the next day.
Yeah. Well, and that's the kind of weather we're getting here, right? We get a little bit cooler, and then today, right, you can get a sunburn out there. It's
Well, I love that, and I love the world that we live in, and especially here we're kind of like in the relatively similar geographic area, Boston and Toronto. We have lots of connections there. And it's kind of, the weather can be kind of crazy and wild. But you've taken on and you've created a world and a universe, the Arestana universe. Tell us, well, we want to talk about the new book, but also just tell us about that process of creating a fictional universe for your books. What's that? Is it amazing? Is it really difficult? Do you find yourself pulling your hair out of your head sometimes?
No, it just comes so naturally. I absolutely love it. Because the world is it's absurd, it's unusual, and it's strange, right? And I just love humor. To me, it's just perfect. So you mix adventure and humor, and it's just the perfect mix. And so you've got this story about this guy who gets pulled from our world into this other world, this world of Arestana, all the time, and everything is different. Mm-hmm. When he thinks one thing, something else is the case, right? Like give you an example. They come across an elevator once, and they've got to go through this terribly dangerous place, but there's an elevator that can get them right to the top, and they put their horses on, and he says, well, why don't we take the elevator up? And they're just, oh, no, of course not. It's a horse elevator. Like, they just can't imagine taking it up, so they take the route of almost certain death instead, right? And this is just kind of the way it goes with this world, and I love doing it. To me, the fun and the humor is oftentimes found in the dialogue, in the conversations, because you've got one person, he's having one conversation and they're having a totally different one, but they're still standing talking to each other, but they're really talking about two different things. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah. It's funny. I'm listening to an audiobook right now. It's called Hi Bob. It's Bob Newhart, a legendary comedian. And he was saying that one of his earliest memories of comedy was the comedy team of Bob and Ray, and they went on an interview show, a national interview show back in the 40s, where the guests know the questions beforehand, so they had all these prearranged answers, but they just gave them to the wrong question. So it was a really like you were just saying, this really absurd conversation where the host was thinking about one thing and the guests were answering questions about something else. I could see how can be really hilarious.
Yeah. Well, and I didn't even realize this when I set out for it, but to do it. But dialogue to me is where that's found, right? When you've got two different conversations in a sense going on, and from the feedback I've been getting, that's one of the strong points of the book in terms of the humor, right? Just right in the conversation. It makes a lot of fun. And then the adventure just pulls them through with it, because they've got to continue along their adventure and continue along their quest that they're on for through all of this and all the confusion. It's just a lot of fun.
So tell us a little bit about the characters and about the Harry quest.
Well, there's a ton of characters. The main character is a boy named Liam, and Liam is named after my oldest son, Liam, or maybe my son is named after the character in the book. I don't know, depending on how you look at it, right? Mm-hmm. But my son came first. So, and then the other main character is Ezra, and that's the name of my other son. And so Liam gets pulled into this other world, and he meets up with Ezra, and Ezra's running from, they're in this old kind of medieval kind of world, and Ezra's running from the soldiers. And so he drags Liam along because the soldiers think they're together, and it starts them on this adventure. And so each of the characters are just so different. There's this one character, she's a lady with, her one of the things that stands out about her is she has these massive eyebrows and they're so big you can't even really see her expressions, right? And so, but she's super strong and so unusual, and everything she does, she yells, she doesn't talk. Mm-hmm. And then you've got this older gentleman who's really wise and kind of leads them through some of their quests and so forth. Just a lot of fun together. And then I've got this, one of my favorite characters is the young lady in the book. And I find a lot of books, when you have a female character today, they tend to be, angry and entirely independent of everybody else. Like, I don't need it. And I see the value of that, because we want to encourage the young women to be strong and stand on their own, and yet we have a world that it's necessary that we live interdependent lives, right? And so she's strong, she's capable, she's highly intelligent, and yet they're a team together. And she's one of my favorites because she actually teaches a lot of swordplay to the boys and a lot of hand-to-hand combat, and she has a lot of understanding, and so she's one of my favorites.
Yeah. Interesting that you're noting that there's a lot of female characters that are angry, almost as if they have a chip on their shoulder. And I definitely wanted my daughter to grow up to be a strong, independent young woman, and she is a strong, independent young woman. But I don't want her to be angry.
Yeah. I mean, anger just destroys our lives, right?
It does.
One of my favorite book series has been The Hunger Games. Mm-hmm. I thought that was extremely well written and everything, but then the main character in that, I always felt that she had a certain strength to her, but she also had a very negative side to her, because she was just kind of I'm going to go alone in every aspect of life, and it just caused pain. Mm-hmm. And I think, no, let's stand together here.
Yeah. Well, and I guess I haven't read The Hunger Games or seen the movie. I don't see many movies these days, but it just seems like that's not a great lesson that we want to teach our kids. We don't want to teach that. Yes, be strong, stand up for yourself, be brave, but you don't have to go it alone.
No. Well, everything in life, the healthiest way to do it is interdependence, right? And that's the way we're supposed to. I think we're supposed to live.
Yeah, you know that's really fun. That seems to be a really strong kind of sentiment in Canada. When I go to Canada, I mean, Canada it's known to be a polite country, and I had this experience in Nova Scotia where I think I looked at a crosswalk. I wasn't very close to it, and I think I looked at a crosswalk, and a driver saw me look at the crosswalk and immediately stopped, and everybody stopped to wait for me to cross the street. And that's certainly not something that happens in Boston. People usually speed up when there's someone in the crosswalk. But but that idea of interdependence is that a really strong Canadian value? We absolutely value independence and that kind of rugged individual Western kind of cowboy kind of image here in the States. Is interdependence something that's very valued in Canada?
To be honest, I wouldn't say so. Okay. We are definitely a very polite nation. The joke is that we're always apologizing. We're always saying sorry and everything, right? Well, we say sorry. No, you don't say sorry. You say it, sorry?
Well, we say sorry. Yeah.
Sorry, yeah, we say sorry, right? So we pronounce it. Well, we're always saying sorry, and all those little pronunciation differences, right? And but I think we're very much independent in our thinking. Just like the U.S., we have this kind of mindset of go it alone, as much as individuals, and it's something more that I've come to value personally over life, and I think it flows both from the interaction with family as well as in my faith, right? And as a Christian, church is supposed to be an interdependent group, right? We're not just me on my own. It's like I need you, you need me, right? And so it's impacted me very much, and I want to be able to kind of write that into stories as well.
Yeah, excellent. And it sounds like the two main characters, Liam and Ezra, absolutely become interdependent on each other.
Absolutely. You see them rescuing each other, fighting for each other, and yet there's still that same sense of, we talk about worldviews, the different worldviews. Well, you have two literally different worlds, and those worldviews coming together, and so you have that. They think very differently, and yet they're extremely close knit.
Perfect. I wonder, are the boys at an age right now where they realize that you're creating these characters with their names and maybe kind of inspired by them a little bit?
Absolutely. My oldest is actually 14.
Okay.
And so when I wrote the first book, he was 13, and I wrote the character as 13. And then my youngest is now 9. And so the two of them, they just love it. They'll make references to it and quote it and stuff, especially my younger one. He'll make comments about it all the time. And so they're very much aware of it. And then I read it to them ahead of time. I write it out. I read it to them. They're one of the first people I read it to, and then they give me feedback, and I adjust it accordingly. So, in fact, in the latest book, The Harry Quest, there's been, based on my wife's recommendation, an entire chapter was taken out, and another one based on my one son's recommendation, just totally rewritten. He enjoyed it, but he thought, no, I don't think it's right for the story, and he was right, and so I changed it.
So cool, and we're talking about being interdependent and absolutely being dependent on our family members as authors and creators. Having that input from our wives and from our kids can be really, really valuable.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's hard to do it on your own.
Absolutely. So you absolutely see the value of reading your story to your 14 and 9-year-old. A lot of parents out there, once the kids are able to read by themselves, I think they think they're supposed to stop reading to the kids and go, oh, no, now it's time for them to read on their own. What do you say about the value of continuing to read with our kids when they get to be 9 and 14, and if not cuddled up, reading aloud for them, co-reading and talking about books together?
Oh, it's. I can't say how valuable, and I can't describe it, the value enough. You see, to my sons, I don't just read to one of them. We'll go the three of us up there, and a 9 and a 14-year-old and myself. We're very different, and so and yet I read the same book to the both boys, and I'm enjoying it as well, and we're into it, and we're able to discuss it, we're able to talk about it. Sometimes, of course, I start making up stuff and I go off track, right? But apparently my voice changes when that happens, so they can tell instantly when I'm making up the story. But I'll do voices and all sorts of things, and they both look forward to it. In fact, my 14-year-old, he might be doing some homework or something like that, and I'm about to put my 9-year-old to bed, and I'll say, "Hey, Liam, I'm going to go read," and he'll drop things, and he'll be up in about 30 seconds, and the three of us will sit there and just read. I think the thing is we read when we're younger, the kids are younger, and we think, okay, we're helping them to learn to read, and then we want to just kind of let them go. But I think the passion for reading comes as we continue it, as they see our love for reading. We illustrate that and demonstrate that as we read together.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you said, the opportunity for conversation. And one of the things that parents I don't understand, and it makes sense that they don't understand it, our kids' reading level is different than our kids' listening level.
Oh, yeah.
A kid is able to listen to a book and vocabulary that is much higher than what they're able to read. So while we're reading with our kids, they're really learning. We're helping them grow their vocabulary the same way we did when they were babies sitting on our laps.
Mm-hmm. Well, when we read to a 2-year-old, doesn't really matter what we're reading. It's probably above their level.
Sure.
Right? And I think what we do is we stretch them, and then they grasp it and they hear our voices, and they're understanding it because they're able to pick it up. So when we read a book to a 9-year-old, and there are, say it's 2,000 words, and say there's 50 words in there that they don't even know. It's a natural skill for us to be able to understand words based on context. Right? We read a sentence and we know, like, if we start using words that each other don't know or don't recognize, right? We can pick out what the person's saying because of the context. We think maybe they shouldn't use such big words, but kids pick that up. And I think it's important to not only read to your kids, but to read a little bit above their level. And because you're right, I think they do comprehend far more than we give them credit for, especially their listening level. That's one of the things when I was writing these books, I remember I was speaking to another author about this, and he was cautioning me not to write too far above the age level I was aiming for. And I thought to myself, you know what, I do want to write a bit above that, because I don't want to just write a book. I actually want to contribute to literacy, our literacy. Like, I want to be able to contribute to people being able to understand more. The way you understand more is get in and read it.
Yeah, absolutely. If you're training for an athletic event, you don't push. You have to push yourself, otherwise you're not going to grow.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And you were mentioning, changing voices and having fun and reading. One of the things that I'm encouraging, I've encouraged my kids, and now when I'm going out and presenting my new school assembly program, Reading Matters, I'm encouraging kids to read vividly and to visualize what it is they're reading. And that becomes so much easier when you're reading it in an animated way.
Oh, absolutely. And I think for parents, like when we think of this kind of thing, I don't know how you are, but when I read, I can't keep the consistent, when I use a voice or a certain character, it's different the next sentence they use. And the next one. And so you might have a character and he speaks like this, hello, at first, and at the end he's like, how's it going? Like, and it's just, my kids are okay with that.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not recording an audiobook. I'm reading to my kids, and they love that, and it makes it fun for them.
Yeah.
I think there's something to that too, that it takes the reading and takes it beyond even just the reading and makes it an experience that we can enjoy. Right? That my wife even talks about. When she was growing up, her mom would sit between her and her brother's room outside the door and read to them. You know, and my wife's little girl was in her room, and her brother was in his room, and they would just listen to the story. And these are memories, beautiful memories that I think we leave for our children, and we set the pattern for our children's children.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. You were talking about experiences and, you know, reading aloud experiences. One of the most fun experiences we had as a family is my wife came home from the doctor and had a medication, and of course the medication came with like a 4-page list of possible side effects, and so I just thought that this would be great to read in a very animated way at dinner time, and we kind of took turns, talking about your hair could fall off, you could die, your heart could explode, and it was just, it was nonsense. It wasn't the story, but it was just that whole idea of reading and being together and just using the written text as a way to interact with each other.
Yeah, I think we need to enjoy being together, right? And reading a list of all the side effects, like your hair will fall out or your hair will catch on fire spontaneously, whatever it is, right? Because they got to put it all in there. That could be fun.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, my guess is everybody wasn't sitting around saying, yes, thank you, that's good to know. Right? They were enjoying themselves.
Yeah, they were, and they were picturing it. It was visualizing it. It was wonderful. Now, Arestana, the Harry Quest, it's the third in the series?
That's right, that's right.
Now, does a family, because we're going to assume that the family is reading this together, and if they're not reading it on the couch together, by all means, buy 2 or 3 editions so you can read it at the same time. But is it something, do they need to read Volume 1 or Book 1 in order to understand Book 3, or can they start at Book 3?
They could certainly start at Book 3, but with like a lot of series, right? There's the foundation, right, that you get, and so the interaction. So when he gets to Arestana in Book 3, without giving too much, he's kind of somewhat rescued by somebody else, and he knows them, right? So you don't have that history, and you don't have the history of what kind of person that person is. And then when he meets up with his friends again, like you don't have that history. So it's certainly to the advantage to read the first 2 books, but it wouldn't be necessary. You'd be into it in no time. And I make a point, of course, when you introduce a character that they know, you bring in a little bit of the history. Because I don't know about you, but when I read a book, sometimes it's a while before I read Book 2, and you get into Book 2 and you're thinking, what was this about again? And it's nice to have the little recap. So of course that's in there, and you could run with Book 3.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny. I was one of the last people to watch Breaking Bad, a classic American TV series.
Oh yeah.
And I actually watched the prequel that came out after the series was over. I watched Better Call Saul first. So when I started watching Breaking Bad after everybody else in the world had watched it, I'm like going, oh, I know. Oh, okay, this is great. All these characters that I'd watched before.
Yeah, it helps.
So tell us where folks can find out more about you and find out more about the world of Arestana.
Well, you can find me at ShawnPBRobinson.com, ShawnPB Robinson, ROBINSON. .com. I had to question, of course, if I spelled my name right. And then, of course, there's a link to the books right there, and you can go on there and you can see them, and the 3 books, as well as an offshoot. I have a series that I'm writing called Jerry the Squirrel, which I'll come back on sometime and chat with you about that. But, they can see that and look up the books, get some more information about it, and have a lot of fun with it.
Awesome. Well, we've been talking today to the author of Arestana, The Harry Quest, Shawn B Robinson. Thank you so much for being part of our show.
Well, thank you so much for having me. This is great.
Please be sure to join us for the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. It's another STEM Tuesday program with our friend Jennifer Swanson, the author of Astronaut, Aquanaut, How Space Science and Sea Science Interact. This is always one of my favorite episodes every month. We get to talk about some fantastic STEM books that will inspire your kids to check out science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. The next episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. Hey, if you're a great author, if you're the author of a great kids picture book or a middle grade book like Arestana, or a STEM-related book like my friend Jennifer Swanson, well, we would love to have you on as a guest for the Reading with Your Kids podcast, the #1 iTunes Kids and Family podcast. As we mentioned at the beginning of the show, an iHeartRadio nominee for the best kids and family podcast of the year. That would be a kind of a pretty cool show to be on if you were an author, especially an indie author, especially the author of your first self-published book. And check this out. Being on the show, it's fun, it's easy, and it is absolutely free. All you need to do is to go to our website, readingwithyourkids.com, click on the contact button. Let us know about your great book. We'll let you know the very, very easy steps that will get you on the show and get your book in front of thousands and thousands of potential readers. Hey, I want to thank Shawn B Robinson for joining us today. And of course, we want to thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. Thank you in advance for taking the time to go and visit the iHeartRadio Podcast Award page and voting for us. And most of all, thank you so much for taking the time to make this world a better place by reading with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast.